Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anthony Zuiker and Kal Penn.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing? This is a very good group.
I'm home.
Yeah, you are home.
I am home
local.
again in Las
You're
Vegas.
local.
Yes.
My name is Kal Penn. I'm best known for playing a stoner, which is naturally, that makes me a good fit for a cybersecurity conference.
Are you stoned now?
I am not stoned now.
Okay, good.
And obviously, you guys know Anthony Zuiker. That introduction was pretty incredible.
That's cool.
Saved me my intro.
Very cool.
But yeah, Anthony, obviously responsible for, among many other things, the CSI franchise, particularly CSI Cyber, which I know is of interest to the group. Also a native of Las Vegas, Nevada. And I wanted to kind of dive right in because we had a chance to talk backstage about a lot of what goes into not just your cyber show, but your franchise. Who do you say your audience is, and how do you find those audiences within those properties that you have?
Well, I think in terms of CSI Las Vegas, Miami, and New York, the audience basically is anybody that likes the crime genre. But more specifically for CSI Cyber, it's anybody who has a device in their hand. You know, the thing is, I pitched this show probably 5 years ago to CBS. It was called Cybercrime. That's creative. And when I was telling them about sort of what happens in the world of cybercrime 5 years ago, they were not prepared to really digest the sanctity of what was happening in our world. I was telling them about going into your computer and memorizing your keystrokes and looking at you, in your camera for your laptop, and how they can call you up and steal your identity. And they were so freaked out. I could see the woman who's supposed to say yes to green light in the show was just turning gray, like those old Kool-Aid commercials, just turning gray as I'm pitching. And they said no to cybercrime. Cut to about 5 years later, when Mary Aiken, who's a cyber psychologist out of Dublin, Ireland, came to Hollywood to kind of share the sort of behavioral aspect of cybercrime with all the major networks, CBS said to themselves, this could be an interesting possibility to team her up with myself, and I knew that the future of crime was going to be cyber. So the timing was just perfect to launch CSI Cyber, and here we are.
Has that attracted a different audience from the other CSI models? Or
I think so. The thing is, CSI Cyber by no means is the perfect television show. It's a very hyper reality. It's almost a little. Put it this way. What we try to do for CSI Cyber, I think from our responsibility, is just to give a level of edutainment and entertainment to the world on a very sort of highbrow level. But the real work is really done by you guys. You guys are in the trenches doing your thing, dealing with a very, very tough and sophisticated criminal. We try to do what we can to raise awareness at a very surface level. But when you really think about the true heroics of what goes on in terms of real crime solving in the cyberspace, it's really on that side of the stage. And so what we hope is to complement what we do on television with what you guys do every day and raise awareness and help keep our world a safer place.
So along those lines, 15 years of CSI, can you talk a little bit about what has changed in terms of the technology and how that affects stories that you're able to tell?
Well, the funny thing about this town is in terms of when CSI first launched October 16th of 2000, Las Vegas did not want us to shoot here because they were very clear that nobody dies in Las Vegas. And I was pretty clear up in my Cosmopolitan hotel that when I went into the balcony, there were several bars to prevent me from jumping over. So people probably do have that happen. But here nor there, the technology in terms of what CSI has done for other crime companies is we've definitely, with the success of the show, have started a lot of mom and pop companies in terms of the science technology of what's used to crime solve. In terms of cybercrime, we're only on episode, probably 22 plus, we're only on episode 34, 35. But if the show continues, and right now it's kind of on the bubble, but if it continues, it will raise more and more awareness, and you'll see new technologies on fighting cybercrime to come out because of the awareness of the show.
35 episodes is an actor's dream.
I know, right?
Yeah, more than a half season.
Just go six, yeah.
So, all right. So you talked a little bit about the catalyst of when you were originally pitching it to networks.
Sure.
What were some of the biggest technological breakthroughs? Were there particular benchmarks that sort of either helped you pitch the show or sell the show?
In terms of cyber, or?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, people have this misperception that I walk around Hollywood and go, great, and it gets made. It's very, very hard to get a TV show on the air. That's the first thing. CSI Vegas was very, very successful, and then Miami and New York came after that. But cyber wasn't easy to get on the air, and we had to have a perfect storm, meaning we had to have, I wasn't going to do CSI Chicago or something different. Hawaii would be great. So cyber made the most sense. You needed to have a star like Patricia Arquette, who happened to win the Oscar during our run. We had a cyber psychologist that was very, very skilled in behavior and really, really worked on a very global level with Interpol. And we had some pretty good storylines that felt fresh for our audience. But even now, with all these big actors that we have, and cyber couldn't be hotter and on the tip of people's tongues, it's still very, very difficult for us to really break out and be a hit. It's a little bit of the format being a little bit stale, and a little bit because we are sort of like, we are telling stories to a big audience, but the audience that really counts for cyber is the youth. If you talk to the FBI at length, I talked to David Bowditch over in Los Angeles, the FBI is having a very, very difficult time trying to convince younger people who are proficient in computers and proficient in the sort of white hat space to come on board and work for the government to help thwart cybercrime, because the black hats have got a big step ahead of us, globally, and the FBI is very worried in the next 5 years they won't be able to have the technology or manpower to keep up. So they've still reached out to me to figure out a way, how do we get some of those really talented young people in our country to help join and do what you guys do and help defend our country?
And how does that conversation go? What are some of the solutions to that?
Well, right now they're handing out pamphlets at these really boring conferences for the FBI, and kids are like, screw you, I want to play Navy Birds. But I think, look, when you work for the FBI and you do something to defend your country, the people that work there so hard, NSA, the DOD, the DOJ, these people really, really do it because they love to defend our country. And there's not a big, huge payday in that civil service. So it's important for us as storytellers in Hollywood, even in the tech space, to make sure that young people understand that there is great value beyond the price point. Because look, it's hard. It's like, go work for the FBI for $50,000 a year, or go work up in tech in Silicon Valley and maybe be the next Zuckerberg. It's a hard thing to convince. So it's a real struggle for us going forward.
One of the things I've really enjoyed hearing you talk about is the respect you have for folks who work in the cybersecurity space, both in and outside of government. What inspired you to create CSI Cyber?
Well, I knew it was coming. And, when you go to the NSA and you go to the CIA and the FBI, especially in the NSA, and they have this really cool thing called NTOC, which is National Threat Operations Center, and they could hit a button and smoke the mirrors and it says classified. It's the coolest thing ever. And when you go there, you have these white hats, right, that have these lanyards, San Diego Chargers, NSA, they're at the cafeteria eating their sort of like, half a chicken. But these guys are sitting there and they're working their asses off, and they're working 20-hour days, and they're not going home at nights. And they're on the red team versus the blue team, and they're holding competitions, and they are hardcore. And those guys are badass. And I'm like, I love you guys. So, I think what CSI did for the nerd squad, which is the sort of the nerds that come in and scrutinize evidence in CSI, right now the coroners were never that cool. And now the coroners go to parties that they could they can get girls and they want to talk about CSI. We hope to sort of to make cybersecurity guys even cooler than you are right now by doing things in the cyberspace. And we have great youth with Bow Wow and Charlie Kuntz in the show. We're making some other casting adjustments going forward. But for us, it's the biggest service we can do besides edutainment and entertainment is really show the world that although it's hyper-reality, and we know it's hyper-reality, trust me, with the beautiful people and the high heels walking around trying to solve cybercrime, in a very male space, where's the girls? I totally get it. I was just at RSA in San Francisco, there's no women there. I get it. But the thing is, our job is to make, if we can do anything right, we just want to make it a little more hyper-reality and kind of make it cool, because CSI is cool and had a great run, but a lot of kids that watch that show have said, I'm going to do this for a living, and they've joined the ranks of criminal justice to be CSIs and do it for a living, and that's what's good about the show. But in no way, shape, or form does it reflect the reality of what you guys do, and believe me, if anyone knows that, it's me.
Well, so what's it like? What's it like to be able to sit in front of 3,000 cybersecurity experts at a
I'm honored. I
conference?
think it's the coolest thing in the world. I wish I could sit down with all you guys and just drain your brains of all the cool stuff that you do and put it on the show. You know, the thing is, it's always cool. For me, as a storyteller, what resonates with a guy like me is authenticity. What resonates with me are, you know, people that are husbands and wives and fathers that have real lives, that work hard, that don't, you know, that don't have the access to the big limelight. It's you know, it's a tough job. It's a very binary job, but it's arguably one of the most important jobs in our country is what you do. And for me, you know, I love to be in the company of that. It's just really cool to me.
That's cool. So we had the chance to watch part of the last session from the green room, and it made me sort of think about one of the things I wanted to ask you, which is CSI is about investigations after bad things happen, right? And in security, Palo Alto Networks standing for prevention, obviously needing both prevention and
Sure.
tackling folks who have already done something bad. What type of research goes into CSI Cyber? And can you give us some examples of how you're educating audiences to ultimately help them prevent a crime in the first place?
Sure. You know, it's funny. There's a 4-star general at the NSA, and he's like this really cool guy. And he heads up the red team and the blue team, and they're all like in fatigues and yes sir, no sir, and it's like it's cool, right? You forget like NSA is like military too. So this guy pulls me aside. He's got like 4 stars on his beret, and he's like, Anthony, this is not my David Caruso impression. Anthony, will you do me 2 favors? Please tell the world to not use password for password. Right? And will you please tell the world to do their fucking updates? I'm like in Deer Hunter. I'm like, okay. So, and this is all they ask of me. Just tell people that. So I can imagine what you guys go through. So, you know, so I'm at CBS going, no password for password or your dog, you know, dog's name. But this is what they're asking us to do because that's a huge problem. And I think people forget, it's like updates, later. But, you know, they would say, you know, they're really, the red team and blue team are cool because they talk to you about, they always use the same analogy, the Empire State Building. If you try to shut every window, at some point the cockroach is going to get in. I use this like cockroach, you know, analogy, but it's true. It's very, very hard to play defense in that world because the offense, I mean, the DoD gets hacked into what, 80,000 times a day? You know, and I think, you know, I really think what we can provide is to make sure the general public is aware that cybercrime is real, and as long as we possess a device and live in this world, we are vulnerable to any level of attack, and to practice proper network hygiene when we navigate ourselves online, and to make sure that, you know, that we understand that those devices in our pockets, in our homes, in our bags, can be used as weapons because this is what's going to go down. I mean, we have a lot of conversations about cyber jihad, a lot of conversations about the future of attacks and terrorist groups, just on the show. So, you know, I talk a lot with the government, and they're very, very nervous about things going forward, and it's a big concern. So, on a general level for the public, we just have to take more responsibility with our devices.
I laughed my ass off when, you know, the 4-star general has your ear, and that's his big ask of you. That sort of shows a kind of a chasm between what needs to happen and the lack of education, right?
Sure.
So 2 billion people worldwide are your audience, right? CSI franchise overall. What do you think has made the franchise so popular outside of the US? And I guess this goes for obviously both cyber, but especially some of the older programs.
Well, you know, I think what I will say is that the American public in the world, thankfully, still loves a good mystery. I think that's really cool. And I think that when you think about what CSI is in terms of the franchise, it's really about a group of hardworking individuals such as yourselves that on the worst day of someone's life go in and scrutinize evidence, solve the crime, put the bad guy away, and bring peace of mind and justice to the survivor. That is a message and a philosophy that has worked on all 4 of my shows and has worked in every language and plays in every territory in this world, all but 6 territories. We cater to 73.8 million people every single day. We're on every second of every day in the Guinness Book, and we have a continual message and infomercial with the franchise, and that's an awesome responsibility for someone like myself. And before cyber goes away or gets canceled, and we won't know until May, every episode that I do is going to have 30 years of orbit around the world in multiple languages, so I can get there quicker than anybody, including the government, and they know that. I think that's why they take us seriously, and we take you seriously to make sure we try to get it right. And believe me, we don't always get it right, and we live in hyper-reality, and we live in Bruckheimer's world, and people have got to be beautiful and wear high heels and do all that crap, and we get it. But we're just doing what we can to keep it on the air and do it on the air because we're smart. And it's always a lot of heavy lifting when we get in front of someone like yourselves in the FBI to really kind of just toss away that stigma of what a Hollywood producer is and realize that we really, really care. I'm a research fanatic, and we really want to get it right, not only for you guys to respect your jobs, but also for the world.
Do you think that's a rarity in your profession, or?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't give a shit. They just write a bunch of shock value stuff, and then the FBI. I had a lot of cold rooms in the FBI. It's like Anthony Zuiker. Fuck him. But the thing is, it's like, brick by brick, speech by speech. When you talk to the insiders, they realize that I do care. I do care to get it right. And there's a lot of people we have to answer to, just like your job. It's not like we just write some stuff and we, smoke weed and go, hey, air it. No, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of people, a lot of chefs, there's a lot of money involved, a lot of big stakes, shareholders. So out of all that crap, you just try to kind of get it right. You try to move people and tell good stories, and that's really what our job is.
Let's talk for a second about the CSI effect, which has been the very positive effects on society, things like higher awareness, more people graduating in forensic sciences, things like that, but also the fact that criminals could be getting hints, or knowledge about what law enforcement might be doing or what to look out for. How do you walk, especially as somebody who takes that very seriously and recognizes the opportunity there, how do you walk that fine line, especially with regard to CSI Cyber?
Well, look, we all make mistakes. My biggest mistake in season 1 of CSI, probably April of 2001, we did a finale called Strip Strangler. And we were, new in the show, doing CSI, and we had the bad guy and he was shaving all of his hair off his body, putting on gloves, putting on booties, sneaking into somebody's home, committing murder, and I got crazy, angry letters from law enforcement going, dude, what are you doing? Because it was teaching people, here's how you kind of cover your tracks. And we were just and believe me, when you're on TV, you're flying. You're like, you don't have time to smell the roses. That was one of my bigger mistakes that I made, and we cut that shit out pretty quick. We're like, nope, no more of that. Because we have a responsibility to not be giving, obviously, ideas to people to be doing things bad. On the contrary, there's good and bad of the CSI effect, right? The good news is now when you walk into a jury and you're a juror, you have some level of understanding what forensic science is. Even pre-OJ, it was like, what? But now you kind of get it. The bad news is that a lot of the layman jurors go in there and they believe you hit a button and names pop up, or people that are involved in victims of crimes believe that there's some magical machine that you do a piece of DNA and where's all the big evidence. So the show sometimes misleads the public that there's magical machines or mountains of evidence that just kind of fall from the sky to solve crime. That's not the way it works. CSI in real life, and I learned it from this town, is not the most glamorous job. It's, there's long hours. You might find a fingerprint. You submit it. You have no idea if the crime gets solved or not. It's a very, very laborious, tough job. So I think overall, what's important is that the messaging is, if you commit a crime, here's how we're going to get you, and that's somewhat of a global deterrent. The bad news is I think sometimes it leads the audiences to think that real life is television, and we hope that they know the difference.
So then, one could argue that you're one of the most important cyber educators in the world. Is that how you see your role as a show creator or a content creator?
No, I don't see myself having that kind of role. I think it's my responsibility to do what I do the best to help keep the country and the world safe in terms of educating and entertaining in terms of cyber. So I'm not going to sit up here and wear some kind of like cyber mantle. I will say that I can get to people quicker than a lot of people based on how the show travels the world. So my responsibility, not only as a husband and a father and a producer and a man and someone who works in Hollywood, is if I have the luxury of being able to, and the privilege, to write something on a piece of paper and shoot it and have it travel the world, and it's my responsibility to make sure that it's accurate and has a good positive message to make everybody else's job a little easier too, and I think we're all in this together at the end of the day.
In general, I think I know the answer to this, so maybe I'll expand on it. I was going to ask you, do you believe there's enough cyber awareness in the world? Presuming that you don't, how do you know, or what are some of your benchmarks?
I don't think there is. I really do. I think that people still don't take it as serious as they should. I think some do. But I think people are still answering phishing letters. There's still spear phishing going on, identity theft going on. I still think they're navigating in places they shouldn't be navigating on. They're on websites they shouldn't be, not doing updates. I don't think people really. It's like your neighborhood stop sign, your neighborhood light. Until somebody gets run over, then there's a light that pops up. I think sometimes you have to be victimized to realize that cybercrime is real. And I don't think we've seen the worst of what could happen in cybercrime in this country or this world. I feel bad for my kids that will probably be living through some sort of cyber attack, where it'd be shutting down critical infrastructure or some sort of SCADA or downing power lines or clogging up tunnels. I mean, there's going to be things that will happen in this country. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't. But I know the insiders are really bracing for the next 5 years as terrorism is on the rise and this becomes a real topic. So it's serious.
We have enough time for a couple of audience questions, about 15 or 20 minutes, and I wanted to give them an opportunity because I know they probably have a lot for you. I have one more question for you, but when we get to a Q&A, we have a couple of folks with microphones, so just raise your hand and they'll come over. Just ask. Try and keep your questions succinct so we can get to as many as possible. My last question for you actually was based on all of the things that we've had the chance to talk about this morning. Is there anything in particular that you would want to leave an audience of actual cyber experts with before we move to a Q&A?
I think on behalf of the franchise and on behalf of Hollywood, and on behalf of everyone in this country and the world, I think you have to know that my writing staff, myself, my wife, my kids are very respectful and appreciative and understanding exactly how important your role is. Not only in the research we do, the conversations we have at law enforcement, the conversations we have at the dinner table. Every time I drive my kids to school, it's always a safety conversation. Oh, Dad, are you again? We really do respect what you do. Cybercrime is the number one, probably the number 2 threat behind terrorism in our country and our world. And nobody has a bigger responsibility outside of terrorism than you. And I need you guys to understand that, to take the Hollywood part of this out of it, and just as a human being realize that we are definitely appreciative and respectful for what you do and very thankful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's move to some questions. Where are the mic runners? Over there. Okay. So if you guys want to raise your hands, somebody will come over to you. First question right over there.
So as you've learned what you've learned in the cybersecurity realm, have you and your coworkers or family changed any of your own security habits?
Yes. I have a 16-year-old, on May 10th, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And they are constantly in trouble with devices. Living in 2 households where you can't control what they do and navigate on devices out of my possession is very frustrating. I've had my child, my middle son, email a girl from a different school whose name happens to be ISIS. And said something bad, and the sheriff and 2 officers pulled this 13-year-old son of mine out of class and interrogated him for about an hour. And it was just a weird coincidence. I have a 15-year-old.
Wait, was it like I love you, ISIS? Was it like...
Yeah. No, but
all right.
my threat assessment expert friend tells me never to say that word out loud in public, so I'll just say it once. But my 15-year-old also, if you could imagine every level of pornographic infraction you could think of, he's done that. So the thing is, so practice proper network hygiene. I mean, I'm like a saint, man. I don't do anything wrong. I'm like, Villanova, did they win? I mean, that's me. But, kids, look, they got that device right, man. What can I tell you? They just, I have a screen rule at my house. You are not to turn anything on until 7 o'clock at night till 9. I have a screen rule. They hate me for it. But I really would try to monitor at my house as much as I possibly can, because the second you turn, I could turn my back for a second with my 15-year-old, and all my computers are in German. And I'm like, what happened? Sprechen Sie? What happened? So the thing is, we have changed our cyber habits significantly. We have made it a level of punishment in our house to disrespect the devices. It's very hard to monitor. The kids nowadays are quick. I'm writing a children's book right now called C for Cyberbullying. And the government has told me that the devices start at the age of 9 with these kids. And it's because right around the age of 9, 10, 11 is when they start to get their devices, and they don't really understand how they can put people in jeopardy. And I'm scared to death of my kids taking a picture of a minor naked. I'm scared to death of anything that goes in social media that will give a false perception of myself. This is a very scary world we live in, and one picture and one post is there forever. You can't get it back, and you're guilty by association. It's just a very dangerous world. So I try the best I can to try to really put the hammer down, but when you're in 2 houses, it's very, very tough.
Thanks for sharing. That was a very, very intimate, candid answer.
I got more.
I'm sure. Who's got the next question? Oh, right over there. Great.
Is cyber being renewed?
We won't know. I actually have a pitch on April 7th, which is Thursday, in front of my big bosses. We're in a world right now where it's like, you just don't get picked up like that. You got to go and do a big dog and pony show, and hopefully, based on some of the changes we're going to be pitching Thursday at 11:30, that we get picked up. And if we don't, it's been an amazing run of 807 episodes over the course of 16 years. It started with a guy who drove a tram at the Mirage Hotel. It's a great story. If we do get picked up, I'm going to bend all your ears for great stories. We're going to keep going.
Awesome.
And can you get an IT pro on staff so when the actor holds up a power supply and says, "I have found the hard drive," he doesn't look like an idiot?
Yes. Well, the funny part is, it's like, we used to have tech advisors on staff. And based on budget cuts, we used to have $5.5 million for a CSI episode, and now it's like $2.7 million for a cyber episode, so we got to cut back. So sometimes these tech advisors either aren't even hired or not on the set. So these poor prop guys are like, "This is a hard drive and it's a toothpick or something." And the actors are like, they don't know. They're just like, doing their lines and drinking their coffee and M&Ms. So they're going to pick up something and go, "Yeah, da-da-da-da-da-da." And then you guys are like, "Jesus," and I totally get it, and I'm with you 1,000,000%. And it's the same. We used to shoot this show. We shoot the show in California, all the shows, and we'd CSI Las Vegas. It'd be all these palm trees and all these hate mail. "Why are you having all these palm trees in Las Vegas? This is such a cheat." Or the worst one, the famous one, when you have a cup of coffee with nothing in it, and they're like, "Because there's nothing in the cup." I get those letters too. So to your point, yes, sometimes we make those bonehead mistakes. It's just a function of the train going too fast, lack of budget, no tech advisor, and actors that are just trying to say some $5 word correctly.
Careful.
I know. Or $8 word. I don't
There
know.
you go.
Yeah.
$8 words, man. You just reminded when I was on House, we would get nasty letters from the nurses' unions because the majority of what we were doing was actually done by nurses in hospitals.
I got a nasty letter from saying that sea bass was delicious. From the U.S. Wildlife over at the MGM. We shot at the MGM, and the guy's like, "That's a great sea bass." All of a sudden, like, cease and desist all sea bass conversation on CSI. Jesus. I'll talk about vodka.
Yeah. Go ahead.
How about getting Nir Zuck on for a cameo?
A what?
How about getting Nir Zuck, Palo Alto Network's founder, the inventor of the firewall?
How about getting the inventor of the firewall on for
I like that. Where is he? Get over here.
For a cameo.
Yeah, we'd love that. That would be awesome. We get picked up, you call us because that'd be the coolest thing ever.
Do you guys have cameos? How does that work if you're stunt casting or guest casting?
Well, let me tell you. The biggest nightmare cameo I've ever had is Justin Bieber. This kid, I swear to God, he came in to do, and I wrote the episode. He comes in and like, no parents, bodyguard person with him, doesn't sign his contract, comes into Universal Studios, puts his hand in the cake, throws cake everywhere, skateboards on the edge of the people doing the Universal Studios tour, skateboarding, locks my producer in a closet, he can't get out. He was such a pain in the butt. I'm like, dude, you're horrible. And then he came back again. But it was like extra million viewers. But sometimes we call stunt casting. Yeah. We've done great stunt casting in our life. But Bieber, boy, he was a bit of a menace back in the day.
So I guess if this gentleman
he's probably better
won't lock
behaved
somebody in
than
the
Justin
closet,
Bieber.
yeah.
But to Justin's credit, he's done a really, really good job repairing his career, and I think he's now pretty much back on top. So thanks to Ellen.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Right back there.
You mentioned earlier the difficulty the government has in recruiting talented people for their security efforts. Don't you think they're partially culpable due to their unrealistic expectations and requirements placed on the demographic that hold those skills?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's great. Yeah. I did the Citizens Academy for the FBI for 10 weeks just to commit to the FBI and learn more about all crimes. And it was brought to me that the government is just not doing enough. And I don't know where that money goes. I don't know what their system is in place, what kind of system Comey has in place to do that. But I do think that it starts with the youth. I mean, I really think that the government should build schools that are proficient in cyber technologies and really try to, we grow a writing staff of younger writers and grow them into really great writers. We need to grow young people in the cyber world that really are proficient at a very young age that could use those great skills. We're set to do that. I just don't think we're doing that. And it's one thing for them to want something, but I think they have to really lobby and get the right infrastructure to build the house properly so we could have much more of the experts we have out here.
The average age of the U.S. Senate is 63. That might have something to do
Right.
with the lack of understanding about technology.
Well, it's an hour later, so.
We have somebody back there? Go ahead. Up here. I can repeat the question. I can probably hear you. So second question is, what about CSI Rio? The first question was, as a law enforcement advocate, how do you feel about the Apple versus the government debate?
Honestly, I just don't know. I don't know enough about it. I just don't know enough about it to really answer it. I can't really take a side on it. I know that I followed it for a little bit during San Bernardino, but then I kind of tuned out, so I just can't answer it. Sorry.
And Rio? Can you double LA and Rio for LA?
I can do Rio. I can do Rio, possibly. I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I think we've got time for one more.
Anybody else in 3,000 people have one question? Yes.
Say that again?
No, can't go there.
You mean you don't want to go on the record?
No, I don't want to go there.
We can do another. We can do another. We have time
Okay,
for. Yeah, great.
Yeah, what possessed you to cast James Van Der Beek as an ex-Marine?
Let me just say, as an actor, I love hearing these candid questions because you rarely get to hear them except from casting directors. So go ahead.
The funniest is, I love the word possessed. What possessed you?
There's a lilt to that question.
Here's the thing about our business, okay? At the end of the day, names internationally still make a big difference from the bottom line of our show. So if they had a choice to do Patricia Arquette versus a no-name, it's always Patricia Arquette. James Van Der Beek versus a no-name, it's going to be James Van Der Beek. It's a very name-driven business. It's not always that way, but I think the one thing I wanted to do more of, and I think we hope to do more of in next season if we get picked up, is we really wanted to do I really wanted to push for more diversification. really have all different ethnicities that really reflect that industry. And it just didn't work out that way because the train runs so fast, and we're such at the mercy of the higher-ups that want certain people in there. James he's a really, really good guy. He just had another child. He's a perfect gentleman. But I think the goal next season is to have more diversity and really reflect, what makes this country great and what makes, you guys great and what you do every day from all nationalities.
That's a fantastic way to wrap up, I think. Thank you so much,
Great, thank
Anthony.
you.
This was
Thanks
really
a
great.
lot.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.